All right, so let's begin, guys. Right, so as you all know, we have all gathered here for the CDC Internship Bootcamp organized by CodeClub, and I'll quickly run you through basically what is going to be the format of this session. You'll have a speaker who will speak for 10 minutes about their experience uh, uh, taking part in the CDC drive last year, and they'll be sharing their experience, their tips for whatever, for everything CDC related. Uh, this will go on for roughly 10 minutes, following which we'll have 5 to 7 minutes of Q&A, wherein basically, during the 10 minutes of the speaker speaking, you guys can put your questions regarding whatever they've spoken about in the chat itself. And once they've finished speaking, we'll have this short 5 to 7 minutes Q&A session where I, the moderator, will be asking them to answer your questions. And if there's anything that you guys feel needs to be spoken about and not written on the chat, then you can always raise your hand during the Q&A session, and one of us will unmute you and let you speak. But we prefer you to put your questions in the chat. So I hope it is clear. And we'll straight off begin with the first panelist, Pranav. I would like you to start.
Hello, am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
All right. Hello, everyone. My name is Pranav. This summer, I'll intern as a software engineer at Rubrik. I'll share my experience with the CDC internship process with hopes that it will help you all plan and structure your preparation. So I'll be speaking about software profiles. And for software profiles, one needs a good grasp on data structures and algorithms. For this, I practiced on code forces and gave a couple of Google Kickstarts. And a month before the coding test started, I also solved interview bit. Most coding tests consist of DSA questions. And there are some firms like Goldman Sachs, Adobe, Oracle, which will ask questions on prop stats and core CS fundamentals as well. But in my opinion, you don't need to stress on preparing for these sections if you have decent CP skills. In my experience, not having done any prior internships will not put you at a huge disadvantage. I had not done any prior internship. Also, you don't need tons of projects in your CVs. I just had one term project that I did for a course in genetic algorithms. Now, agreed, projects will give the interviewers a chance to interact with you on stuff other than the standard DSA questions. But again, I'll stress the fact that not having any pioneering projects is not a deal breaker. Regarding your grades, I'll say the higher the better. I had decent grades, so I didn't have to worry about not clearing the GPA cutoffs. But I do know instances where my friends who had performed just as well in the coding test could not qualify for interviews as they were held back by the grades. For interviews, for software profiles, I appeared for interviews of Rubrik, and for systems, I gave interviews for AlphaGrep. Rubrik had 3 rounds. The first round had a CP-like question on graphs. Involved concepts like breadth first search and multi-source breadth first search and shortest paths and all. The second round also had another CP-like question, one that you might expect on a website like Codeforces again. It involved dynamic programming, binary search, and probabilities and all. The third round was like a project discussion and an HR round. For AlphaGrep, I was just able to sit for one round. I probably did not clear AlphaGrep for the second round. In the first round, they asked questions on heaps, trees, linked lists. I was asked to implement the vector class in C++ as well. I kind of botched this interview. They even asked if I know operating systems or computer networks. I did not. I did not have these courses till then. And yeah, that was basically it for the interviews. Regarding preparation, like if I had to just sum it in one line, I would say that, keep your grades high, keep your GPA as high as you can, and practice programming. on CP platforms like Codeforces, and just a month before your interviews or coding tests, brush up or complete interview bit to fine-tune your preparation. One thing that I would really like to stress on is during interviews, if you're unable to think of a solution, or if you are able to just think of a part of a solution, do share it with the interviewers. They really want it to be an interactive session. It's not that you did not go well if you weren't able to solve the question entirely. If you have communicated your thought process well and have shown them the that's all I have for now. I'll be happy to take up any questions you have.
Right. So if anyone has questions for Pranav, please raise your hands or put your questions in the chat. In the meantime, Pranav, could you tell us more about the kinds of DSA topics that one should focus on? Is there like a few topics which are more important than the others?
I don't think so. The coding test had a pretty good mix of all topics. If you do want to practice some particular topics, I would say dynamic programming, graphs, binary search are some important topics. But I think it would be wrong of me to say that, just focus on these topics, because I've noticed that interviews as well as coding tests have had a pretty good mix of questions from all the topics.
All right.
And in terms of resources, like the questions you find on Codeforces and interview bit will be sufficient. Like you don't need to go above and beyond that.
All right. So Atulya Sharma asks, by high CG, how high do you mean?
Well, that varies from firm to firm. Some firms have a 9+ GPA cut off, 8.5. By high, what I mean is this. Suppose a firm conducts a coding test and there are just 3 questions and 100 candidates end up solving all the 3 questions. But the company does not want to interview all 100 of them. It just wants to interview, say, 30 of them. So what the firm might do is select among those 100 students who have solved all the 3 questions, the 30 students with the highest GPAs. Like that's what I mean by high
tiebreaker, and that tiebreaker is quite often the CGPA.
Exactly.
And so there's another question here. Did you prepare for some companies or profile particularly, or applied for all of them?
I applied for all software profiles and high trading firms. Regarding preparation, I just prepared for software profiles. I only did forces and interview bit. So I did not prepare any core CS fundamentals. I did not prepare operating systems, databases. I also did not prepare particularly for quant profiles, although I did give interviews for quant profiles. But yeah, so that's it.
Right. So there's more questions coming. Does solving the questions faster make any difference during coding talks? Most often it doesn't, isn't it?
I don't think so, right? Another thing that's worth pointing out is questions do have a number of test cases. So if you are unable to solve the question entirely, do ensure that you are able to make the maximum number of test cases you can pass. So a question might have, say, 20 test cases, and even if you're not able to think of the optimal solution which will pass all the 20 test cases, if you have time at the end, you may choose to write a suboptimal solution which will help you pass, say, 8 or 10 of those test cases, and that will actually count towards your points. They sort of do have a partial marking scheme to them. It's not like Codeforces, like it's like either AC or a WA or a TLE.
Exactly. Great. So I think we'll move on to the next panelists, and the questions that have come after this we'll take up with the next. Finance panelist. All right, thank you so much, Pranav.
Thank you for having me.
Uh, next, next we have Abhinandan there from the CSE department. He is currently in his third year. So, Abhinandan, the stage is yours. Please go ahead.
Yeah, sure. So before I begin, could you please confirm if I'm visible and audible?
You are audible, but
Not yet visible. Okay, I'm audible clearly, right?
yeah, you're audible.
All right. So let me begin. So hi, I'm Abhinandan from the Department of Computer Science, third year UG, and I'm looking forward to an internship in DE Shaw this summer.
You're
Today
visible.
I'm here to. I'm visible too. Thank you so much. So yeah, so this summer I'm looking forward to an internship in DE Shaw. And I'm here to share my CDC journey today. And I'll share my strategies. I'll also talk about some of the mistakes I made, and hopefully they'll help you. So after analyzing the whole thing, I have divided it into 3 periods. First of all, begins with the preparation phase, then the coding tests, and ultimately the interviews. For the preparation phase, it's generally conventional, begins with CP on Code Forces or Code Chef. And personally, I started it at the end of my first year. I gave Google Code Jam and Kickstart as well, but that was in March, just before the internship. I had exposure of Algo and DS from my Algo 1 course, which is definitely recommended. And just before the interview, I guess it was like 2 months, I started with interview bit. I solved it almost as much as I could. And yeah, that was it. Apart from the conventional methods, some of the unconventional things that I did were I made groups of like 3 or 4 people among my friends only. And I did simulations of online coding rounds on binarysearch.com. So there is like a really nice website in which you can go to, in which you can sort of create rooms with 3 or 4 people. You can give timed contests, and then you can discuss with each other the solutions, and ultimately you can even see each other's codes as well. I also did another thing, which is recording myself and watching for improvements. What I used to do was I used to open a random question on interview bit of a suitable topic, let's say DP, and I would read the question completely and solve as if I'm explaining to an interviewer. And later on, trust me, this speaking while coding is not as easy as we think. It's tough. So when you sort of do this and ultimately rewatch that, you can find shortcomings where you can, improve. So that's definitely something which helped me personally a lot. Coming to the coding tests, I'll talk about DE Shaw. I was actually shortlisted for 4 companies: Sprinklr, DE Shaw, Quantbox, and another one, NK Securities. I'll be talking specifically about DE Shaw because there are others for the 3 companies. For DE Shaw, we had in the online coding round, that is, we had 3 sections, and each section consisted of 1 problem. Each of these sections were individually timed. So that means you get X minutes for 1 problem. If you can't solve it, that's gone. So the 3 questions were of varying difficulty. The first 2 I would say were medium easy to medium, and the last one I would say was of a medium hard level. So for the first 2 questions, the topics were of, say, math, permutation and combination, and fast exponentiation. So if you have things like you required the knowledge of things like mod inverse and fast exponentiation. So if you are a regular CPR, you will know these topics. Else, it is recommended to go through those. The last problem was a medium hard one based on digit DP, and we required to backtrack the states there. So it was many people couldn't do it, but a partial score helped. So again, stressing on the point which Pranav said, brute force might work in some cases. If you even pass some of the test cases, you might be shortlisted. So this was the case for TE Shaw. Apart from that, while you are practicing on interview bit, I would recommend that you only stop solving a problem once you reach the AC point, right? So the thing is that for an online coding test, if you just think a lot about it and if you just don't submit anything at the end, nobody will get to know that, oh my God, this guy has thought so much, this guy has spent so much time. So let's give him credit for that. You need to submit something. What I used to do for interview bit is that if I can't solve a problem, I just looked at the solution sometimes, and I used to think, okay, this is a good idea. I could have done this. I'll keep this in mind. No, that does not work. Please reach the AC point, and that's where your problem solving journey becomes complete. So that's about the coding tests. Moving on to the interview. Again, for T Shaw, we had two technical rounds. My round one for the Shaw focused on data structures and algorithms and a little bit of SQL as well. Since it was mentioned on my CV, I have done a project. The SQL question was fairly straightforward. If you need some exposure for SQL questions, I would recommend there's a HackerRank problem set for SQL. And the DS algo was, I would say, 1500 on code forces, not tougher than that. The topics were of a wide range, let's say greedy, deep, and graphs. Right now, I'll not be talking exactly about the questions, about exact questions which came in the interest of time, but I can definitely share a doc consisting of that later on, if required. So that was round one. I could do everything the interviewer asked. And round two was the typical, DE Shaw round, so to speak. Like I experienced what seniors had asked me to expect out of their interview. So like, let me say something. DE Shaw is a company which focuses highly on your concepts, object-oriented programming concepts, or OOPS in short, and they will stress a lot on virtual functions. So if you are interviewing for DE Shop, please make sure that you go through each and every OOPS concepts and with a special stress on virtual functions. Okay, so this is specific for DE Shop. And as far as OOPS is concerned, I would say that some other companies like AlphaGrad also stress upon OOPS. So they asked me on OOPS and virtual functions, and they asked me some advanced C++ concepts as well. That is about say R value references or smart pointers and stuff. But luckily, I had a good teacher and he taught us pretty well. I was able to answer those questions. So that's it for the interviews, and that's how I was luckily able to do well in the interviews, and I could get through. So if I would say some takeaway points from the interview. Remember that you and your interviewer must always be in the same page while you're discussing with each other. The interviewer might try to run away with the question, so you must at that moment of time stop him and clarify each and every small point. Make sure that you have understood the question well. And the best thing that is most recommended is that you even solve a test case in front of him to ensure that yes, that's where your understanding journey is complete. And when you sort of build on your solution, it's always recommended to go step by step and sort of you start from the brute force solution and you build and you optimize. A student who, let's say, keeps quiet for 3 minutes after he's asked the question and just produces the optimal solution by magic will not be preferred as compared to someone who takes even like 5 to 10 minutes to build his solution. And even if you can take few hints from the interviewer as well, that would also do. So don't be ashamed or feel shy to take hints from the interviewer as well. So these were the takeaway points from here. Yeah, so that's it. I would be really happy to take a few questions. This is an interactive session, so yeah, I hope you have doubts.
So let's take questions now. People here are asking things like, so which platform do companies use for coding tests?
Well, I for DE Shaw, I actually got a code pair platform. As far as I remember, it was like they send you a
Uh,
link and the yeah
Abhinandan, I think so. He's asking which platforms do companies use for their coding tests,
online
not
coding
the
test. So I
interviews.
see.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I understand. I understand. I'm sorry. For DE Shaw, we had HackerRank, and yeah, HackerRank interface is also pretty good. And
And
you
I
must
believe
also be
for Google, we had Hacker
for
Earth and
Hacker Earth, right? And there were a few problems as well there. So, like, there were long queues for judging. So, keep that in mind. Be prepared to face that as well. Um, yeah.
right.
So, the
So,
platform should not be of a big deal, but still, you just have to have it at the back of your mind.
right, right.
Yeah.
So, can the questions be compared to Codeforce's levels? Easy, medium, or medium hard varies from person to person. So, if you could like give a mapping in terms of Codeforce's levels.
Right. So, for the coding test of DE Shaw, I would say the first two questions were of 1300 to 1400 level. Not more than 1400 for sure. And the last one, since it required backtracking, I would put it in the 1600 bracket, 1600 to 1700 bracket, not more than that. So, and for the interviews, the levels decrease a little bit to our respite. It would be around, I would say, the 1400 level again. So that's as per the Codeforce's scheme for rating.
I think that is the case for quite a few companies as
Right.
well.
Yeah.
Right. So then someone asks, basically we code in local ID and then copy paste it in the platform ID, right? No, that is
That's something which you should not do. In fact, some IDs have an inbuilt feature where they prevent this, where they turn off this control V feature, and you have to whenever you code, it's always safe to code on their particular ID which they have provided, right? Yeah, so definitely don't do this.
that's a big no. Um, Bhanu Pratap Singh asks how to become good at CP just from solving problems in interview bit code forces or any course and reference videos as well.
Well, the way I practiced CP was giving through giving contests on Codeforces, and I used to watch videos by this famous guy called who goes by Second Thread on Codeforces. He used to explain the solutions, and I loved his videos. But right now, your major focus should be on interview bit because that's more interview oriented, CDC oriented, right? So you have to, make a balance between both these things.
And one last question that we did for you, Abhinandan, is for the interview round, you had mentioned about OOPS concepts in C++. Does the software engineering theory course of CS cover the required stuff?
Absolutely. Uh, Well, we had a teacher, Professor PPD. Whatever he taught for OOPS, all the basic concepts were covered properly. And if you can somehow get hold of the slides, I guess he has a course on NPTEL. I guess you can get the slides there as well. It's a very long list. I would recommend reading blogs more than that, but definitely you should go through that. That course is definitely it contains the whole thing for sure.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Abhinandan.
Thank you for
Yeah.
having me.
So now we'll move on to our next panelist. So up next we have Anish Agarwal from the Department of Civil Engineering. He's currently in his fourth year, enrolled in the dual degree course. So Anish.
Yeah, hi Rajat. Let me
Hi.
please
Stage is
confirm
yours
if I'm
now.
audible.
Yeah, audible. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me begin by introducing myself. I am Anish Agarwal and I'm a fourth year undergraduate student of the Department of Civil Engineering, and I will be interning at Goldman Sachs in the upcoming summers. So let's begin by how I prepared myself for the journey. So basically, since I'm a dual degree student, so I had seen my friends who had gone through the CDC process who were in the 4-year batch. So definitely from that I got to know that CP plays a very important role, to be honest, as compared to other factors. And So after that, like I started my journey in the month of December, and I had somewhat kind of a different strategy for myself. I practiced completely on lead code, but I was quite frequently giving contests as well on courses and codeship. Like I used courses and codeship only as a medium for giving contests. And on lead code, I was mainly brushing up my concepts on algorithms and data structures as well, because they have the function definitions given, and you just need to write down the logic of your code, which is actually the pattern which most of the companies follow in uh, their coding rounds. So basically, that was my preparation strategy for that. And towards the final leg of the preparation, I switched to interview bit, because switching to interview bit is very important. The reason behind it is that definitely we'll find some problems which you can solve using a data structure, but interview bit tells you that you need to solve it in over one space complexity and stuff like this. So it puts some restrictions on that. So definitely you need to have a different approach for that, for those kind of problems. So definitely it played a very important role. Interview bit is a must. Like I had solved almost all the questions on interview bit except 3 or 4. Like I had solved almost all of them. And next, let's talk about the coding rounds. Being a student from the non-circular department, so definitely it feels a bit of pain that you can't appear for all the companies, because you are not even allowed to sit for the coding rounds of those companies. So definitely you shouldn't focus on those things which are not controllable by you. So what I felt is that you should give as many coding rounds as possible, because you shouldn't skip any company because you don't know. And it happened with me as well. Like most of the coding rounds of different companies went very well for me, but I was not even selected for the interview rounds. So finally, coming to the interviews, like I was shortlisted for Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, and Sprinklr on day one. And finally, I got an offer from Goldman Sachs. So let me discuss the interview process. So what happens is that in the interview, first 4 to 5 minutes basically dwells on your CV. So you just need to go a walkthrough of your CV, and you need to so basically that phase is in order to make you comfortable. The interviewer wants you to be comfortable because those are the projects that you have worked on, so you can explain in a much better way. And it followed by some coding questions on DP. So mostly it involved those questions like buying and selling stocks with at most K transactions and at most 2 transactions, so to be specific. So you can find out these questions on lead code as well. And definitely then so this was the first round. And also like in Goldman Sachs, okay, let me talk about the coding like pattern as well. So there were 5 sections in the shortlisting test. So there were 2 coding sections, one HR section, one quant section, and another section was on CS topics. So there were 2 coding sections. So in one of the coding sections, you were given 30 minutes to solve 2 questions, and in another coding question, you were only given 1 question for 45 minutes, and that was a pretty tough question. It was on bit masking DP, and like I was able to solve the 2 coding questions, like which were in the first section. In the second section, I was able to solve only 8 out of 13 test cases. So that's also a very important note, that you don't need to pass all the test cases in order to qualify for the interview rounds. You can like write down a suboptimal approach, as mentioned by Abhinandan and Pranav as well. And moving on to the and yeah, I had also prepared a bit of quant as well. Like for that, I had referred 50 challenging problems in probability. I'd also solved problems on Brainsteller as well, and you also need to look up a few puzzles as well. So for that, I like looked upon on Gigs for Gigs as well. There are around 90 to 95 problems available there. So you can check all of them, and these are sufficient for the quant profile, like if you are aiming for Goldman Sachs. And moving on to the interview, so first like DT questions was asked to me, and then a few probability questions, like there were about 2 of them. And in the second round, like they were mostly focused on the optimal solutions. Like as I discussed in the array sections of interview bit, you can find out that they want you to solve it over one space complexity. Like they put some special restrictions on the problem to be solved. So mostly that round was involved on that. Like normally we solve merge sort using recursion, but he told me to write on the iterative version of the merge sort. So these kind of variations were there, and you need definitely a calm mind to solve those questions, because those are the tricky ones. And it also followed by a few discussions on the few probability sections. And also I would want to point out one thing during the interview, like completely share your thoughts. Like even if you are stuck in a problem, like it happened with me as well. Like I was moving in one direction, then I don't know what happened, and I switched to the another direction, and I was on it for a 2-3 minutes, and then the interviewer told that like you should think in a direction like in which you were thinking earlier, because that would lead to the solution. So definitely this kind of things help. Like if you don't share with the interviewer, then how will he be able to judge you, like in which direction you are moving? So that definitely helped me as well. And you should keep on interacting like your thoughts in the interview. And mostly more takeaways are there, like you should keep practicing coding on Google Docs as well, like just before the interviews, because I don't know like if it is going to be conducted in online mode or offline mode. So having a practice on coding on Google Docs is very essential. And what I did is that I had also contacted a few seniors and my friends, so like they also conducted mock interviews for me. So that also played a very crucial role. Also, like, and regarding the CDC process, like it's very hectic as well because it goes a month-long process. So I would suggest that you should keep checking your mails regularly, because don't miss out on that, because it might happen that you receive a mail at 4 p.m. and it has a deadline at 12 p.m. So definitely you shouldn't miss out on those deadlines as well. So yeah, that's all from my side. I'm ready to take up any questions.
All right. So let's take up questions from the chat first.
Sure.
Which platform would you suggest for beginners of competitive programming for preparing for coding tests and interviews? For absolute
Okay, like
beginners.
if you're a complete beginner, I would suggest LeetCode, because Code Forces has different phases and you need to devote around 5 to 6 months of that, because like there are lots of ups and downs over there, because you're competing with your friends over there. And if you're just beginning right now with Code Forces and there are only 2 months left, so definitely it's not advisable to go on Code Forces or CodeChef, any competitive sites. What you can do is that you can give virtual contests over there so that you can judge yourself and keep practicing. Like, according to my suggestion, you should keep practicing on LeetCode and focus on different algorithms and data structures.
Right. LeetCode and of course interview bit as well. Like
Interview bit. Yeah, it's a must.
So there you go. If you're absolutely beginning right now, LeetCode and interview bit is the way to go. Also, Anish, did you take any courses? Because a lot of people have been having queries about taking paid courses for preparing for these.
Okay, so actually I had begun quite early, like I had begun in the month of December, so I didn't go for any of the paid courses.
Right. Makes sense. Okay, so now let's talk a little bit about whether, like, did you have any projects on your CV, and whether you had any prior internships that you had already done that were a part of your CV, or which you think played a role in you getting, say, shortlisted or getting the offer from the companies that you did.
Like coming to the second part of the question, I don't think that any internship or project plays a crucial role in your selection process, because that only involves 5 to 6 minutes of your discussion of a 45-minute long interview. So definitely you are mostly judged on the questions that are being asked in the interview. And coming to my internships, I had done one internship at the University of Melbourne. I had one more internship at a startup, and I had one project under a professor. So definitely I had not mentioned all 3 of them. I had only mentioned 2 of them on my CV.
And did you have discussions about them in your interviews?
Like initial 5 to 6 minutes. Yeah.
So, I mean, basically, just like how Pranav also said, it's good for engaging a discussion with the interviewer, right? It doesn't play as big a role as DSA questions that you are answering in your getting shot, in your getting started.
Exactly. That discussion is only to make you comfortable during the interview. That's all.
Yeah. Right. So, someone asks what you told about 50 problems of probability. Is the knowledge of probability necessary?
Okay, that's a book, 50 Challenging Problems in Probability. You can definitely look up that. So definitely you can, like what I did is that I devoted only 3-4 days for preparing quant. So that's sufficient. So, I don't think that
basically probability knowledge would be necessary if you are preparing for the quant profile, right?
Because in GS what they do is that they judge you on multiple factors. Like it's not only on the basis of software. So they also ask you questions on probability and expectations as well as puzzles. So you should have a knack of that as well.
And so what about CS fundamental questions in your case? Were you asked CS fundamental questions like OS?
No, I was not asked.
Or OOPS or anything like that?
No, being a student from the non-circular, it's an advantage that they generally don't ask questions from such topics. And definitely you can dodge those questions by saying that these courses were not in your curriculum. And also you can cover it up by saying that if these concepts are needed, so you can definitely cover it up before joining the firm. So you should definitely not say a plain no to the interviewer. You should cover it up.
All right. So, what type of questions are there in one section? Are they purely puzzle type, or do they require some theoretical knowledge as well?
On like there was a course in our second year, probability and expectations. So mostly questions were involved in that particular domain. And yeah, normal puzzles, like if you solve a bit of them on gigs for gigs, like you will get a way of solving them. So that's more than sufficient. Like you don't need to worry much about it actually.
Yeah. And finally, I believe one last question that I'll take is something that I saw in the queries that were submitted on the form that we had circulated. Did CG play an important role for you in any of your uh, shortlists, or basically, did you think CG played an important role in your getting shortlisted for companies?
Like I had a good enough CGPA, so in order to qualify for all the company shortlisting process, but definitely it plays a crucial role. Some of the companies do have a 7, 7.5, and 8.5 as well, and some companies definitely go to 9 plus as well. So definitely, like even you will not be allowed to sit for the shortlisting rounds as well. So yeah, it definitely plays a role.
I believe lots of software companies do have a CGPA requirement of 8 plus. 9 plus is lots of high frequency trading firms, I feel.
Yeah.
I'm not sure currently, but yeah, CGPA, there is a CGPA cutoff, and then for tie breaking as well, like Pranav mentioned.
Exactly, yeah.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Anish.
Okay.
We'll move on to our next panelist now, which is Arundhuti Naskar from the Department of Electrical Engineering. She's currently in her third year, enrolled in the BTech course. So, Arundhuti.
Hello everyone, am I audible and visible?
Could you be a little bit louder, Arundhuti? I can hear you, but it's a little low. Hello.
Yeah, am I audible now?
You are audible.
Is it fine?
If you could just, somehow like be a little bit louder or increase like the volume of your mic or something. If not, it's
Yeah.
okay.
Yeah, is it fine now?
Yeah, it works. Please continue.
So, hi everyone. Let me begin by introducing myself. I am Arundhuti Naskar, a third year undergraduate student from the Department of Electrical Engineering. I will be interning at Salesforce, where I grabbed my internship in the CDC drive last year. Today, here I am to share my internship journey with all of you. I started preparing for my internship in the month of January last year. And to be honest, I really did not have much experience to coding, especially CP before that. And so it was the CDC and everything was like quite new to me. So in the month of January, what I mainly focused on was preparing for data structures and algorithms and of learning or and just understanding and practicing the concepts. So since I'm from electrical department, our core courses definitely do not contain the algorithms and other courses, and neither did I take those as additionals also. So I basically studied them on my own during the semester, and after the summer holidays started, I focused more on improving the concepts and the learnings that I had on those topics. And for me, I also did not do any prior internships in any software profile or anything. And all the projects which I put in my CV, they were mainly based on, they were self projects. So I would like to talk about my coding tests and later what are the platforms that I prepared from generally. So basically for practicing, it will be since I did not practice much from CP platforms like Codeforces or CodeChef. And for me, it was more essential to grasp the DSA, the various topics of DSA and to practice and implement so that I can implement them on my own. Hence, I did it by practicing from lead code and also from the GFG DSA cracker. Basically, they have small topic based problems. So they help you to grasp and make your base stronger in a particular topic. So I would suggest like try to see which topics are mainly more important for those which generally come for coding tests and rounds, and try to create your foundation, make your foundation stronger in those topics. So basically for the coding tests and for interviews also, all the topics are more or less important, and a mix up of all of them will be required. But if you know certain topics well, then they will help in your implementation in a better way. Like STL is important, that is like helps you solve a lot of things faster. Then some CP concepts like exponentiation and some exponentiation, then some fast methods for solving the math based problems that help you clearing the time complexity cutoff. Then mainly after heaps and maps are also some important topics that are required for the coding test rounds. Then graph and DP, these are like the topics which mostly question, at least a question will be there in most of the coding rounds that I sat for, at least one question. And the more optimized solution that you write for these questions, the better it is, the better impression that it will make to the interviewers. Now coming to the coding tests, basically our coding tests usually start the CDC before the day one. There is like a week, or there are like 15 to 20 days before that. All the coding tests of the company start, and after that they all have their interviews for their interview scheduled in the day one, day two, and day three, day four, like that. So basically, towards the last month, that is around in June and July, I focused mainly on the projects which I made due in my CV, and also in while for practicing in interview bit. Now that was very helpful, because in interview bit there are questions written topic wise, and also based on the companies where these questions have asked. And as Anish said previously, that depending upon the questions, the platform itself asks you to submit a more optimized version of the desired time complexity or memory complexity which is required for that solution. So the thing is, you have to it's better to prepare the topics which you feel that you're weak at, and solve the questions based on that, and at least one or two questions, because towards the end you will see that most of these questions are common across all the platforms, and there is like a set of concepts which are repeatedly being asked over in the interviews. So if at least you could cover those parts, it will be really helpful to clear the interviews, clear the shortlist most importantly. Then after clearing the shortlist, the comes the interview rounds. And I would like to talk about the coding test and interview specific to Salesforce. For coding test round, it was a 1 hour test, and we had three questions. There was a question on map, and the second question was graph based, and the third was on dynamic programming. I think solving all three questions, that is one of the criteria, I guess, was for shortlisting. And finally, moving on to the interview round for Salesforce. The interview process was, it was a 2 round. In the first round, I was mainly I talked with my interviewer about. Firstly, it began with solving some questions, some no DSA based questions. Basically, topic for interview topics like binary search, linked list, these are mainly asked, because in coding test a few questions come on those topics, so they're mainly more focused in interviews. They ask, for me, my interviewer asked me to write a part of the program on Google Docs, which he was also checking at that time. It was not via any testing platform or anything, but simply like practicing, like writing on Google Docs. So for interviews, it's really important that after you get the question from the interviewer, you yourself repeat the question to him or her, and so that you know that you have understood what is being asked of you at that moment, and there is no missing, you're not missing out on any point. It's better to ask follow up questions, so that you can take care of the edge cases that is needed. And as you solve the question, it's always advisable to speak out your mind, and because the interviewer won't know what you are talking about, or what you are thinking, so it's better to just write the code. And as you write, even maybe before you have started coding up, it's better to just uh, speak about what you are thinking, how your approach to the problem, because more important than solving the problem or coming up with a solution is how you approach to the problems, because after all that is what the interviewers will be looking for in the candidates, that how they approach a problem given if a new problem is thrown at them, then what is their way of handling it. So I was asked 2 3 questions, coding questions, which I was asked to code up. Following that, in for Salesforce specifically, I was asked questions on OOPS, object oriented programming, on like topics like constructor and inheritance. Basically, I was grilled very nicely on these topics. Now did not have much idea about OOPS from before. I just read it up a week before my interview process started. So whenever I had any doubt on any question or I didn't know the answer, so I it's better to tell it to him that I don't understand this type of question. So my interview actually helped me by giving me a scenario, and in that I had to explain that if this happens, then what is the type of output that I will expect. And that goes for the interview round. And following that, I was shifted. There was an HR round immediately after that, where I was asked some basic HR questions, normal HR questions. And after that, shortlisting happened. I was lucky to clear that round, and that was it. So I would love to take any questions now. Yes.
Great. So let's take up some questions. Uh, I have some questions for you that were submitted on our form yesterday. So, uh, what do you think is the importance of projects for your internship? What kinds of projects did you have on your CV, if any? Could you please elaborate on this?
Yeah, like I said, I did the projects which I had on my CV were basically self projects, and honestly, for software profiles, not much importance is given to the CV, or it's just because for shortlisting, mostly it is not given, and in some companies, the interviewers use it as an icebreaker to talk about like how the person is, just to make the person comfortable. It gives us
Right.
a topic to talk about in the interview. Apart from that, no high end project like that is necessary. Means if you can take up a topic and you do it on you, if you understand it very well and you do it in maybe in a 1 month, you can do a project. I basically had a ML project, just a normal
Yeah.
classification based project on that. Yeah, and a CPP graph based project and a Python scripting project, just normal, just basic, not too much complicated or anything. And the
Right.
interviewer may ask you questions, but what is important is that you know what you are putting in your CV. Like don't like write it anything that you want to. Means make sure that each and every word that you write in the CV, if you should be able to explain it nicely. Like before you write it, try to see that you can give a 5 minute a lecture on that topic. So that will help you to so if at all the interviewer asks you question about your CV, you'll be able to answer them. So mock interviews you can conduct with your friends or seniors. That those help really a lot.
Right. So, mock interviews would. What do you think? How do you think mock interviews helped you in your preparation?
Yeah, mock interviews are helpful because, first of all, you can arrange it with a friend or a senior or anyone who is preparing this same thing with you. So that person will, first of all, pick up a question which is completely new to you. You don't know. And then you will, the thing is, the processes which I mentioned while giving an interview, that you have to, first of all, ask the interviewer, explain it in your own words. Then you have to ask him what is the edge cases, what are the different variables that you have to consider. Then these are the, and while you go walk through the solution, you have to simply tell it to the interviewer. So these are the tips which I realized while because when we code up during a coding round, it's like we are doing it on our own. Everything works in our brain, so we don't know what we are thinking. But for the interviewer, while interviewing, when you are coding it up, you have to say everything. So that is, even if you approach the wrong solution, even if you are going the wrong direction completely, it's totally fine. What the interviewer will see is that you this is your thought process, and that should be clear. So this is the reason why you should do mock interviews. Then again, in mock interviews, the person who is taking it will ask questions about your CV, because that person doesn't know what project you have worked on. So to that person is a layman to your project. So basically, you have to defend your project to that person. If you could make him or her understand, then you know that, yeah, maybe during the interview also I will be able to do the same. So it's basically for confidence, for practice, and to learn from your mistakes.
Makes sense. And one last thing. So if somebody wants to start working on a self project, is now the right time, and will they be able to finish it in, let's say, about 1 month or so?
Yeah, sure. Now is also the right time. Or for me, I did not start it like till May end, like that, because now I think is more important is the coding, to practice for the coding rounds and the
Okay.
interview, because it depends whether your projects will be asked or not.
Mhm.
Mostly they are CVs, they are like CV fillers. For
Right.
software, the DAC is more important.
All right. So thank you so much, Arundhati. We'll move on to the next speaker now. Right. Nandini, are you ready?
Yes, am I audible?
Yes, you're audible. Please go
Okay,
ahead.
so I'll start by
Yep.
introducing myself. So, hello everyone, this is Nandini. I am a fourth year undergraduate in the Department of Computer Science, and I'll be interning in Google for the upcoming summer, for this summers. So, most of the things have been covered by the previous panelists. I'll point a few things which I felt during my during my coding test and interviews, which you should know. So for the test, for my preparations, since I'm in a dual degree program, I started preparing like the previous year itself, not preparing exactly, but then since my fellow batchmates were appearing in CDC, so I started coding the previous year itself. So I had decent CP knowledge until now, but then interview like the coding tests which are held by companies and the interview rounds, those questions are completely, like not completely, but very different from what. So basically the trend of code forces these days has shifted to more of ad hoc questions, which is not the case for coding tests. They might ask you more on like DSA knowledge. You might require DSA knowledge for coding test and ad hoc plus DSA, but code forces has a shift. So particularly, you might want to practice mock test for coding for companies. So if you get a chance to attempt mock test for companies, please do. One major thing I think someone mentioned previously, please do not practice on your own IDE. So like even Sublime Text, it completes the loops for you, which is not the case in HackerEarth or HackerRank. And coding test, like at least for HackerRank or HackerEarth, they do detect your window, the time you are interacting with their own window, whereas with if you like shift to another window, and if you copy paste a code to their IDE, they would detect that, so that would be counted as like plagiarism or something. So try practicing on their own IDs. Like if you practice on interview bit or any other platform, code on the same ID. One very important thing, please do check if the language is correct prior to attempting the question, because I specifically remember in one test what happened was that was a fairly difficult question. I think in Google itself, I'm not really sure. I forgot to change the question. So like the default, I forgot to change the language. The default language was set to C, and I wrote the code in C++. And like after compiling, I realized that the language was not correct. And when I switched the language, so the complete code was gone. Like some IDs do not do so, but some do. Like Google has its own platform, I guess, so maybe they did not take care of it. So these are very small things, but you should take care. Like you might waste a lot of time rewriting the code, even though you were correct on the first go, it might take a lot of time. So yes, I think rest of the things regarding test, and yes, like test you since there are many companies which come for the software profile and you'll be giving a lot of tests, there are many things which you'll learn through giving test itself. So like for GS, as Anish told, there are 5 sections. So what happens is there are timers for each individual section. So like 15 minutes for the quant section, then 30 minutes for the easy algorithmic questions, then 1 hour for the difficult question, something like that. So what in most cases what happens that that difficult question is not like crackable. So what people do is that they, you know, the question which was for the like the easy question, if you have understood it correct, you can utilize that time, that 1 hour of that difficult question. Like if you made a decision that you won't be attempting this, you can utilize that time attempting the rest of the questions. So like these are some tricks which you can employ, but yeah, you need to like you need to be present at that time. You if you like panic or if you start panicking, then you won't be able to think of such things. So yeah, like regarding this was all. Then for the interviews, make sure like you get the shortlist 1 or 2 days before the before day one. So talk to specific seniors of those companies. Like that is very essential, because every company has a unique, like almost a unique interview style, the number of rounds, the way they conduct their interviews, whether they discuss your CV or not, or they just jump onto the question, the time of the questions, all of those, they depend on company to company. So make sure to after deciding your preference order and stuff, make sure to talk to seniors from those specific companies. That will be of very much help. So for me, what happened was since I'm a dual degree student, I had courses like computer networks and operating systems in my course, and I did prepare for them, and also DBMS. So what I it's very advisable to prepare a a 45-second introduction of yourself. The interviewer will, in most of the cases, ask you to introduce yourself, and it's it's not at all advisable that you start speaking like on the spot itself. It's prepare a 45-second crisp introduction involving like the things which you want to be interviewed on properly. So what I did was, after telling my basic details like name, department, and program, I used to say that I have a developing interest in competitive program, and also after 2 or 3 lines, I used to say that I have started exploring systems through my curriculum courses, which include operating systems, because I prepared for them. So I included these in my introduction, so that if the interviewer wants to interview me on those, he can. So even in your the same goes for CV. If there is something in your CV which you are very confident upon and you want to be interviewed upon that, you might include that in your introduction in itself, like not directly but in a subtle way, so that the interviewer knows you have done this. So yeah, since I this was my introduction. So for Microsoft, it happened like I was also questioned on operating systems, not very deep, but in the first round itself, I basic questions like on deadlocks and stuff. So since I was prepared, like I felt that the interviewer was quite impressed that I knew those concepts of OS. For the second round also, I was I was expected to know about OOPS. So yeah, for people who have done these courses, you, or at least for the dual degree students, you might want to you might have to prepare for at least OS, the basic concepts, not the complete not the complete course, but you should know the basic concepts. Other than that, yeah, OOPS is, I guess, OOPS should be known by all. For now, like since I got selected in Google, they do not give a damn about anything other than your coding abilities. Like for me, those two coding rounds were held like back to back. Just one started at 12, and just after it ended at 1, the other round started. So like consecutively. In both the rounds, they did not ask me about anything. At least in the first round, she asked me to introduce myself, but in the second round, the interviewer directly jumped on the question. So that's why I'm telling you to like talk to seniors specifically. So I knew that this is the case in Google. I won't be asked about my CV much or the rest of the things. So yeah, so they usually like judge you on your coding abilities, that the things which you do there itself. No, like I don't think they even had my CV at that point in front of them. So yes, that was all, I guess. If there are any questions, then you might ask. I don't. I think the rest of the things have been covered with the rest of the panelists.
Yeah, right. So, Nandini, do you think there's other topics apart from DSA that needs to be focused on for uh, any company that you like interviewed for or sat for in terms of coding tests or for interviews? You
So
mentioned that you studied OS and networks. So, are those things asked in coding rounds and
So
interviews?
I studied these topics to be on the safe side, like the companies which I got shortlisted for. Uh, Microsoft, I expected that I might be questioned on these topics, but for the rest, I also interviewed for Uber. In Uber, I think the people who are interested, they might know that there are two rounds. So one is the basic coding round that you are used to, like you are asked a DSA based question, but the
Right.
second round is a like oops designing round. So like you actually need quite a good grasp of oops. So like you should know the concepts of constructors, destructors, classes, all the concepts regarding oops. So because you are asked to like you are given a scenario, and you need to completely like implement the class structure for it. So like I was asked a file implementing system. So yeah, though only this, not like as far as I remember, nothing else.
Right. Any other specific tips that you might have for dual degree students, specifically since you yourself are a dual degree student, or
So
like
for
extra preparation or topics that they must do, which BTech people usually don't have to?
okay, so I'm not like at least for the CSE people, since I know they have these core CSE concepts in their curriculum, they definitely should prepare for them, because you also make there's a section in your CV where you mention your course curriculum, and these are some of the major curriculum, like these are some of the major courses in our curriculum, and hence you might be expected for to know about these preparation wise. And also yes, in the CV, I think at least for the dual degree students, they should have like a project, may it be a term project, but like a recent coverage, combining your internship and projects, a decent coverage in your CV. So at least for the dual degree students, because it's it's justified. Like, what did you do in all the
That's specifically
coding?
for dual degree students, right? Not important for
No,
BTech people as well.
not for BTech
Yeah,
people, because they know that the time you had wasn't much to like
correct.
wasn't very long to do a lot of.
On the other hand, it is advisable for dual degree students to have some kind
Yeah, a
of an
decent coverage
internship
of.
or a, yeah,
Yeah.
and
For the
about Google's.
rest of the departments,
Yeah.
I think Anish already like explained that.
Hmm.
Yeah. So
Uh, what were the approximate ratings of coding questions that were asked? I believe he's asking about Google with respect to code forces?
So for the test, like there's a pool of questions which so for like I'll tell you the format. So there's this pool of questions and everyone gets like two of them. So some like one question of mine might be common to one question of someone else and the other might be different. So it's like that. It's not that everyone gets a different question. So I particularly think that like after the test, at least I got I got knowledge of all the questions. For me, I thought that those were the two most difficult questions. So they were at least like 1800 to 2000 for my case. Like one question was very long. It was not very difficult, but it was very long. It had too many elements. Like I had to put
Right.
binary search, extra many things in a single like question. The other was on bit masking, and that was a fairly like tough one. So for me, it was 1800 to 2000, but and like for the rest, it varied from like 1600 probably. But they asked decent, like pretty decent, difficult questions.
And how much importance do you think coding tests hold in comparison to, let's say, Kickstart ranks for Google specifically?
For Google specifically, see, no one ever has been able to decode the selection criteria or the shortlisting criteria of any company, not just Google. So there are many cases like people who did not attempt, wasn't able to solve any of the coding questions, like test questions, was also shortlisted, but people who solved both the questions wasn't shortlisted. So it's
Right.
safer. Like I had decent ranks in all the three coding. For Google, you might know that there are coding competitions which are conducted by Google itself, like CodeJam, Hashcode, and Kickstart. So I had decent ranks in all of them. So that way I felt I was safer on the shortlisting side. But yes, again, having said that, it's not like definite. You might end up getting shortlisted having solved none of the questions or vice versa as well. So
Right.
do attempt. There might be 2 or 3 kickstarts in this period of 3 months, like before the test. So make sure to attempt those and have decent ranks. That will be a very you'll be on the safer side.
And in addition to that, Google Kickstarts do have extremely good problems based upon data structures and
Yeah,
algorithms.
that
in
also
terms of-
helps in practice. So like people
Yeah,
who are not targeting the company are also advised to attempt those because
absolutely.
they are really good questions on Kickstarter.
Awesome. So thank you so much, Nandini. We'll now move
Thank
on to the
you.
next speaker, Aditya. Are you ready now?
Hello. Yeah, am I audible?
Awesome. Yeah, you can start now.
Okay.
You're
Hello,
audible.
everyone. Hello, everyone. I'm Aditya Agrawal. I'm a third year undergraduate from the Department of Mechanical Engineering. I'll be doing an internship with Sprinklr this summer. I will go through my journey and experience of how I got the internship through CDC in detail. So the first part was preparation. I had been doing regular CP since the previous winters, and I started doing it at an even more accelerated rate from the summer vacations. So like I gave all the regular contests across all the major platforms, and I also solved the ladder questions like the A2AJ ladders. And side by side, I also followed interview bit, and I completed it before the coding rounds began. So after the preparation had ended, the CV building phase started. So I will just describe how my CV looked like. So one major part of my CV was the web development experience that I had. So it ranged from some self projects and some technical PORs to a summer intern that I did before my CDC. Apart from this, my CV also contained some ranks and ratings from the contests and competitions that I gave. And this part actually helps in shortlisting for some of the companies, including Google, as I have heard. So soon after the CV submission was over, the companies had started coming for application and tests were about to start. Being from a non-circuital department, it is always a little disappointing to find out that most of your dream companies are not open for you. But nonetheless, some great companies were open for all the branches, and that's where most of us applied. So soon the tests began. And about these tests, they mainly have some coding questions which we have to solve in a limited time. These questions can be easy or hard depending on the company. Like some companies ask really easy questions which everyone is able to solve, and I don't know how they shortlist after that. But yeah, some companies ask really hard questions. Like in my case with Sprinkler, there were three questions. The three questions were varying in difficulty. One of them was really easy, and the second one was medium, but the third one was so hard that I guess very few people were able to solve, and I was also not able to solve the third question fully. I solved it partially. So yeah, so actually the like the factor is about time. So the time is not really sufficient most of the time for solving all the questions. This is why competitive programming helps uh, at like this time. So since you have to be quick while solving problems, so problems in these coding rounds mainly involve DSA concepts like DP, graphs, trees, binary search, etc., and not the ad hoc problems as in the code forces contest. So in like coding rounds, ad hoc problems are rarely asked, not mostly asked. So the tests may also contain some MCQ section about the puzzles or core CS concepts like OOPS or DBMS, but those are like less frequently, uh, not in the most of the companies. So about interviews, so many people ask when do we start preparing for interviews and give mock interviews. So I think that interviews are not that hard to prepare for, and you can start preparing for them a week or two before the day one. Uh, the most crucial thing for interviews is the communication of your thought to the interviewer, as all of the speakers previously also stated. So that is the most important part, and giving mock interviews really helps to practice that thing. The day one came last year. Again, being from a non-circuital branch, I was eligible for only five companies, I guess, for day one for software profile. So I got shortlisted for Goldman Sachs and Sprinklr. I prepared for the interviews of them by reading the previous interview experiences of those companies and talking to the seniors who had previously interned there. So first I had an interview of Goldman Sachs on day one. I completed two rounds, but I also answered the questions that I was asked, but I'm not sure why I was not called for a further round. So this is also a thing to keep in mind that many a times luck plays into a factor, or I don't know what actually uh, how actually they shortlisted for the further rounds. So after that interview, I was called for Sprinkler interviews. Here again, the first round DSA questions were asked, like coding questions. I had to explain my thought, and I also had to write some pseudocodes, and I answered all the questions in this round. Then the next round also began with DSA questions. In the midway, the interview shifted towards core CS concepts. As I was from a non-circuital branch, I clearly stated that these courses had not been in my curriculum, so I'm not very prepared for the core CS courses. So he skipped that question, and then the interviewer asked me some questions regarding my CV, and since my CV had frequent mentions of React and React Native like tools, so the interviewer tested me on my knowledge of those. And in fact, he went too deep in React. I had to explain how React works in the background and what makes it so fast behind the scenes. So after this round, I was called for an additional technical round. The main focus of this third round was my background of mechanical engineering. They wanted to know how I am suitable for the role being from a non-CS background. I had to justify my interest and knowledge in CS. After the third round was the HR round. Many people generally ignore the HR round, but like they do not prepare for that. But HR round is not quite easy all the time. Like they put you in challenging situations, so you have to have a clear mindset before going into the HR round. So this mainly concludes my CDC journey. The major takeaway, according to me, is that you should stay confident on your skills and you should be regular in your preparation so that you are able to face any problem that comes up. An important tip I would like to give is that you should have some friend or as a partner during your preparation and coding all the way to the interviews. So like this thing keeps you motivated throughout the journey and it helps a lot. Yeah, so I'll be taking some questions. Rajat?
Yeah. Thanks for sharing your experiences, Aditya. Does anyone have questions for him specifically? Um, uh, Anybody from non-secretarial departments? Any specific questions that you might have? If not, before they put up their questions,
Yeah.
Aditya, did you have to did you study for these extra topics like DBMS and object-oriented programming, or did you get asked questions on these topics, or do you know of people from non-secretarial departments who got asked questions on these topics in their
Yeah,
interviews?
so in the coding test, like in the online rounds, in some of the companies, these course concepts are asked, and there you don't have an option to skip those topics. So yeah, I had prepared somewhat about the OOPS, like the basic concepts of OOPS and the simple things such as virtual function and all. And in my Sprinkler interview, I was in fact asked about the OOPS concepts. So I clearly stated that I am not very prepared as these courses have not been in my curriculum.
Makes sense.
But still, yeah, but still it's like if you have some time, you can prepare for the basics of OOPS and DBMS. Like they don't take much time.
So yeah, basically, wouldn't hurt to prepare for
Yeah,
them.
yeah,
Uh,
but it's not necessary.
got it, got it. Let's see if there have been questions in the chat. Where can non-circuitry people study concepts of groups from? Do you
So
have
for OOPS
any
concepts,
suggestions?
I guess there are some interview questions about OOPS on some websites like GFG also. You can go through those. Like OOPS is something where you just have to know the theory about how those fundamentals, how those things work. So you can I did actually read the interview questions of OOPS on GFG and some other sites. I don't really
Yeah,
remember the sites, but that would be sufficient.
yeah. Even I am aware of some MCQ question sets available on Geeks. For Geeks, they're pretty good
Yeah.
on groups concepts, so you can go through that. Um, does anyone else have any questions for Aditya? Or Aditya, if you can remember of any specific coding test related tips that you would like to share, something notable that might have happened, something that you might want your juniors
Yeah.
to avoid
Yeah.
some mistake that you made.
So this did actually happen in my test of Intuit. So that what happened was my laptop was not plugged in, and all of a sudden my laptop turned off in the middle of the test. And when I turned it back on, it showed that I went away, and I was like I could not code for another 5 minutes. Like it gave me some timer of 5 minutes after which I can start coding again, like some penalties sort of a thing. So the only problem was my laptop turned off. So make sure that laptop your laptop has enough battery and it is plugged in while giving the test.
That is a very important thing to take care about. A small thing, but yeah, quite tricky. Uh, so,
Yeah.
anyone else? Any questions? Okay, I believe that's it for now. Thank you so much, Aditya.
Yeah,
Uh,
thank you for having me.
we have our last speaker now, Archisman Pathak from the Computer Science Department. He is currently in his fourth year. He's a dual degree student. So, Archisman, please go ahead.
Am I audible?
Yeah, you're audible.
Okay, fantastic. So, hi everyone. My name is Archisman Pathak, and I am a fourth year dual degree student from CSC IIT KGP. I'm going to do a summer intern at NK Securities Research for this year, and I got it through the CDC drive. So, the first thing about a quick introduction, background kind of thing. So, first of all, as a difference from the rest of people here, I actually didn't have a CP background at all. I never really did CP, nor did I really like it at all. So the way I prepared for the intern was to basically maximally use the 2 to 3 months that I had, right? I completely solved the interview bit platform, and I also specifically for the coding test, I also completely solved the interview bit platform, and I was also doing a certain amount of lead code actually to get a knowledge about the popular problems that actually exist in the interview domain, and to actually kind of get an experience about giving tests and coding contests, right? So now that was kind of that is kind of the preparation journey that you do for the coding test. However, if you actually are a CP solver, then it's better for you. If you are not, follow this. If you can, do code force, right? So the question that actually also comes in mind is that what is the basically the difference, right, for a systems role? Since I am selected for a systems role versus a software role, right? So a systems role is actually a bit different from the software role in the idea that you are not actually building a product for a client, right? There is no client facing component to the product that you are building. What you need to do is that you need to basically maximally optimize your system so as to gain the highest amount of monetary gain. That is what an HFT actually wants you to do, right? And hence the kind of the preparation for the interview is actually a bit different from the way the normal product-based companies interviews actually go. So in my interview, actually, what I was asked is basically first I was asked the DSA questions. Those are like other companies as well. The DSA questions are usually in interviews that they are pretty standard ones. They don't really go out of their way to trouble you. So they are like going to ask you the standard and more difficult questions from interview bit or from the lead code. Like I was asked about there is this LRU cache problem, and there was a problem on graphs, and some more problems like those. Some on basically optimizing the set based data structure. So what they have is that they have very fine leaning towards data structures, right? And to make sure that you actually use the most optimal data structure that you can actually. So that is very important for them. Problem solving does matter to them, but often the leaning on data structure tends to be very important. This I also observed in like the coding test of other HFTs that actually came to the campus, that there was this strong a component of data structure involved in this. So with that DSA out of the way, apart the next major actually component that is existing in the interviews is that of the OS and OOPS concepts, right? Some companies also ask, actually some HFTs also ask the questions from networking. So if you are from a CS background, especially if you are a CS dual degree student, you need to know if you are a circuital dual degree student actually, then you need to know OS almost thoroughly, right? Because I remember being asked questions which were about topics from the late mid-sim or even after mid-sim, right? Topics like those, like working set, thrashing, etc., right? And so you need to be totally thorough with the OS. A good way to do that would be to, if you have taken a course on OS, then just go through the slides and brush through all of the slides. If you haven't, then maybe just take a course or maybe watch some YouTube videos if HFT is what you are targeting for. And apart from that OS, you also need to be well versed with computer network topics. So the OSI the stack and how each layer actually functions, what are the intricacies of that, get a knowledge about the TCP, the algorithms and everything. So that is there also. And the third very important thing is basically OOPS. So for the HFTs, they actually are going to grill you thoroughly on C++ knowledge, right? How the questions that are very importantly asked are basically questions on C++ runtime polymorphism and the virtual functions and the various types of cars that there actually exist in C++, how the inheritance etc actually works, because these are, as you can understand, things that you are going to be dealing with day in and day out at your intern or at your job, right? And they would necessarily wish to make sure that you know it thoroughly. So for getting to know about OOPS, what you can do is that you can actually refer to there are these interview preparation videos on YouTube. Like there are these channels called CPP Nerds. I happened to have been watching these videos a week prior to my interviews, and actually they were extremely helpful. So during the interviewer actually had certain tricky oops questions prepared, and it was like the entire program, and you had to suggest changes to the program to optimize it, or you had to suggest some what would be the output of the program, give dry runs to the program. So all of these kinds of questions would be asked to you from the oops section, right? So, and as I said it, that and now since there were a couple of questions regarding HFTs in the questionnaire, so just one thing, so that what is the approximate CG cutoff that HFTs asked? It's actually quite high, right? So see the HFTs which are going to take shortlist interns on basis of the CV alone are going to ask for CGs above, I guess, 9 actually. And in general, I see that this the trend of taking high CGs from the intern for the HFTs. Also, they also actually kind of look for a bit of projects which have a systems component, at least for the systems role, that like maybe some operating systems course or stuff like that in your CV. So that can kind of matter, but that is not a uniform trend across all the HFTs. And apart from OOPS, as I answered, the CS code topics like OS and networkings tend to get asked a lot. And but there is this thing that they don't actually ask this from the BTech students, because the BTech students are not expected to know that, right? So that was all from my side regarding the preparation for the coding test, for the interviews, and finally getting selected.
Nice. Archisman, as you said, for circuitry dual degree people, it is important to know about operating systems concepts and networks concepts. It's very important to know about these. So, how did you practice Like, did you practice questions upon OS concepts, or did you just brush through the theory, like you said, through the OS slides that you get in the CS department course? Or did you
So
like
I
practice
actually
questions?
didn't actually kind of didn't really have to go through the entire practice problems or such, because I believe the OS course is just before the CDC, right, for a dual degree student. So if that is the case, right? So in that case, you are basically, if you are actually attentive during the classes, then you have already actually studied a bit of OS and fair bit of OS during your semester. And after that, it's like it gets you tend to forget things in the 2 months. So it's just like
Right. So just to brush up, you get
brush
through
up,
the
brush up.
slides once again.
Precisely.
Right. So regarding networks, were there questions specifically asked about things like were you asked questions on networks as well?
I was not actually asked, but actually this was this was kind of the advice that also my seniors had actually given. So
Right.
it actually depends. You can be asked questions on networks. You might not be asked network questions on networks. Actually, the interviewer had questions ready, but he just chose to. You said that you seemed. So let's just gloss over that. So, but in networks, my seniors, in fact, themselves had the advice that the topics that you kind of that are kind of important are like the basic overall understanding of how a computer network is actually going to work, right? That how the OSI stack works, how the TCP the packets get sent, UDP packets get sent, everything, right? How reliability is ensured, etc. Right? So that is kind of important.
Makes sense. Right. And so, were you like specifically, were you grilled upon projects or internships in your CV specifically by these HFTs, or was that not the case for you?
No, no, not really. I had a couple of development projects where I worked on startups, worked with startups, but those were not really asked at HFTs. They don't really care about those development angles, right?
Got it.
So I gave this interview at Sprinklr, and they actually, since it's a product based company, they actually kind of
got it.
thoroughly went through my entire CV, asked me to actually do a system design for basically the Instagram home feed, actually video feed. So they asked me to do a system design for that, if that might be that could be helpful so for some of the product based aspirants.
Okay.
So
So they went through your CV, saw your projects, your development projects, and based upon that, they asked that question.
absolutely, one of my project was actually related to that kind of system design, and so the interviewer was a fairly experienced, it seemed he was a fairly experienced software developer, so he just went on and basically asked me to design the entire Instagram video feed.
Right. So, in short, if you're willing to, if you're aiming for a systems profile in an HFT, basically aim for a high CGPA and prepare object-oriented programming really well for the BTech people, and in addition to that, for dual degree students, operating systems knowledge and networks becomes important as well, right?
Absolutely.
And
The co-
what is the case in the coding tests? Do they also ask questions? Oh, and also, what about database management? Were you asked
uh,
questions on DBMS?
oh no, actually, I actually skipped that course in my in that semester, so I don't think I didn't have that written on my CV. So I guess they didn't ask. In general, I don't see people asking HFTs directly asking about DBMS. D sure does, but yeah, it's kind of more of hedge fund or.
Great. Thank you so much, Archisman. That was enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
All right. So we'll be closing in a few minutes. Does anyone have any last minute questions?
Yeah, Rajat, I had few things to talk about. Am I audible?
Oh, yeah, sure. Go ahead, Sahil.
So, guys, you know that there are many resources on internet as well as other panelists have mentioned few of them. So, it's very important for you to stick to a few resources during the summers and stay motivated during this entire period, since regular practice is important for many of you guys, since many of you guys might be just starting with CP, right? So, I would like advise you to stick to few resources only during this period. Also, I wanted to talk regarding the offline mode, right? Since the last offline mode for CDC was way back in 2019, and most of them have graduated. So most probably you guys will have offline mode for CDC. And yeah, I just wanted to tell you what it is like during offline mode. So you will have to go to the CIC or some place to give the coding test first of all. So you need to be well versed in writing code. Like most of you would be like accustomed to writing, taking help from IDE, right? So that is not the case there. So prepare accordingly for that. Also, you would have offline interviews as well. So those are held in Nalanda. You would have to have a suit and go to Nalanda to give the interviews. For that, it is very important that you have a clear priority in your mind for the companies, since some of you might be shortlisted for many companies, but it is not possible to give all the interviews, right? So talk to your seniors if you're not clear on your priority, and decide a priority before going for the interviews. And you also have to tell to the platform as well the priority of your interviews. So there are incidents that some companies even consider that the time that you are coming, right? So you might go to your third preference in afternoon, and by then they might have already like took some interviews and selected some students. Then you might be on their low priority, right? So consider all those points while you are making a priority list. Okay, then I also wanted to say that the CDC progress, especially in offline semester, would be very rigorous. Like the apart of uh, apart from day one, day two companies, like day one is held on Saturday and day two is held on Sunday. Then there will be a week long period where you will have tests for other day companies, right? So those are during the night. Like it might be that you are in Kalidas area giving tests till 3 a.m. or 4 a.m. like that, right? Then even during interviews, like you get called randomly at any time of the day. Like you might get called at 6 a.m. in the morning, or notification that you are shortlisted for this company at very odd time, right? So it is very important that you are preparing with a group of friends who are there to help you, who are there to check upon you and like inform you about any recent developments, right? Also, there's a MFTP portal. Uh, so you guys should register yourself on there. MFTP is basically it will mail you about all the notice that are coming on the CDC notice board, right? So you just need to join that group. Someone can like send the group invite here. Okay. Then yeah, yeah, like the also like don't like think that CDC is the end of all thing, right? Everyone gets to a good place sooner or later, so don't be worried about too much worried about it. Like just take it up as a challenge and do your best while like also learn from your past experiences. If you are having a coding test in which you are not able to solve some question or from some topic, you can like brush up that topic before next coding round, right? So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much, Sahil. Those are actually some very valuable tips that he gave right there. Not something that is discussed a lot, but yeah, extremely important. Do stay positive throughout the process because it will not be an easy journey and you will need to be motivated throughout. Thank you, Sahil.
Yeah, one more thing, like, yeah,
Yeah,
don't be worried about CG. Anyway, you won't be able to do anything about it right now, right? So,
yeah, fair. I mean, with whatever you've got to give your best. Try to enhance other aspects of your CV, be it your PSA prowess, be it your like do a self project which you can talk about for a few minutes in your interview, steer your interview in that direction. These are things that you can control now and you can brush up on. So yeah, that's what you want to focus on. So I guess we'll end this session right here.
Also, Rajat, like
Yeah, yeah,
I actually had a few idea thoughts actually. So this
yeah.
year,
Please go ahead.
while the intern was actually the entire process was online, so this next year, obviously, as Sahil is himself clarified properly, that it's not going to be online, it's rather going to be offline. Hopefully, at least, like what the situation right now is. So
Right.
there is going to be a disparity between the online and offline process always, right? So while in online scenario, we saw that that shortlists are not appearing even after solving almost all problems, or even after just failing 2 to 3 test cases due to whatever reasons that might be. But you can rest assured that that would in general not be the situation or the scenario in the offline scenes, right? So what would happen is that you need to kind of also need to be a bit more focused towards the kind of questions in situations like that. If you are not very well versed with CP, or if like solving all problems completely is not possible for you, then maybe you should actually try and focus on a couple of topics very much, right? And like from my internship experience, what I actually found is that the like two on almost every coding test that you are going to have, there is going to be at least one this question on binary search the answer, right? The painter's problem and stuff like that actually keeps on getting repeated, right? Especially in the a lot product based companies, right? So maybe some product based companies would ask very difficult questions, but the general lot would be basically asking questions on this type of topics, right? That is binary search the answer, dynamic programming, especially the knapsack variants of those of this dynamic programming. So these kind
Agreed.
of questions are going to greedy with not means some standard array based problems, right? So these type of questions are going to keep on coming, right?
These
Every
are the
interview,
standard ones, and this is why, like he said in his talk as well, it becomes important to solve the questions on interview bit because they cover all of these standard problems, right?
exactly. So like these are going to keep on coming, and so what is going to be a test? So if you somehow you kind of messed up a bit, if you are not able to do CP, if you see that you are not able to solve all problems, it's like you won't be able to solve all three problems. You are not that well prepared. That is and might be a case for a number of you, right? We hope that won't be. But in that case, what I would suggest you that you is that you thoroughly solve these problems, right? This category of problems, because these category of problems are going to come in the coding test, right? And you knowing these topics well is going to give you an edge over the rest, right? So always keep this in mind that your competition is with your fellow batchmates and a 1 year senior perhaps, and like they are also in more or less the same state of mind and same frame of mind as you are, right? So don't be completely distraught कि यार CP नहीं आती यार DA से कभी किया नहीं है, so what would happen? So don't be totally distraught like that, right? Take the 2 months as a challenge and complete the try to do CP as much as you can. If you are not getting that properly, do the entire DSA course and interview it and practice some problems, right? So that was just a few parting words from my side.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Archisman, for those last words. And is any other panelist willing to say anything else as we close this session? Anyone else? All right then. That was all.
If Rajat,
Yeah.
if someone wants to ask a question by unmuting themselves, they can.
Yeah, please raise your hand if you want to ask a question, and I will unmute you.
Don't be shy, guys. Like you might regret later that you could have known something today. Cool then.
Okay, so let's move on to do we have something on the chat? What should be the least target at? What do you mean by least target at CF or CCD? You can unmute yourself, Atulya. I mean, you can raise your hand and unmute you. Rating won't matter. CF rating mostly for companies won't matter. I believe there are one or two companies who might be shortlisting you, or I'm sorry, I mean, yeah, probably shortlisting you based upon your code forces rank or your code chef rank or whatever, but largely
I
not
think he
something.
means preparation wise too. Probably you can tell about that.
Oh, acha.
Prep wise, what ratings?
Acha. Problems. Yeah, I believe at least 600 is a must. At least 600 is a must. But then again, you see Codeforce's recent trends, like Nandini also mentioned. Codeforces is recently only giving ad hoc problems. If you can try to solve some of the older problems, definitely go for problems with a rating greater than 15 or 1600, not lesser than that at all.
For that,
But yeah,
Kickstart might help. So, like the archive, those are actually
agreed.
questions. Those type of questions could be asked in like coding tests or interviews as well. So maybe.
Yes. Do go through the Kickstart archives. They have like 5 to 6 years old questions also. So, and all of them are DSA based questions. And you get to learn something from each one of them. It will be really helpful. Can we code in other languages except C++? Yes, you can. We give you options to code in other languages as well. But I think I don't know for how many companies this was true, but there were like one or two companies which allowed only C++ or C to be used as the programming language. I
I
think
think
some of
there
the
is
other
one
languages,
I do not
yeah,
remember. They expect you to code in like there are two questions and you need to code them in like different languages.
different languages. Like they
Yeah,
had
actually,
different
there was this
language groups, right?
company, APT Portfolio, like it asks you to code only in Python, both of the questions.
Acha, right. Was it?
Yeah, yeah. Like the only allowable language was Python.
Actually, at my time in Amazon, they asked code in C only.
Okay, yeah. So
And
sometimes it is the case that companies will ask you to do it in just one language. It might be the case, but I think in most of the companies you get an option. Am I right? Some also give a specific Java problem. Not sure about that.
in one like Nutanix, the debugging round. So I think that was a like Java code which we had to debug, probably something like that.
Yes. So yeah, that if yeah, that could have been there.
so, guys, on the test platform, say that whether you are allowed to use STL or not. Uh,
Yes, yes. Sometimes you. So usually, what is the case is that they will give you a template of the code already. Sometimes it will just be a function that you will have to fill. Sometimes it will be the entire code, but parts of that code will already have been written. So things like hash include bit slash std would have would already be written over there. But sometimes you're not allowed to use STL or things like that in your coding tests. So do take care about that.
very few companies.
Again happens very less for very few companies. One or two companies max. Almost all of them allow STL, but again there could be exceptions. So is converting to dual recommended if one doesn't feel prepared enough?
You have 2 months to get 2 to 3 months, right? 3 months to get
Yeah,
prepared enough. And 3 months is a lot of time, believe me. You can be
even
prepared
if
more than enough.
Yeah, and
exactly.
even after 3 months, like what happens is that CDC has two phases of internship. Like the first phase in
Absolutely.
this particular autumn semester, and the second phase in the spring semester. And definitely, companies like MTX and Barclays they come in the second phases. And like everyone should not target like day one, day two. Like it's not the end, right? CDC is
Precisely.
not the end because companies like Amazon, Disney Plus, Hotstar they come on day threes and day four. Like companies like Morgan
There were a
Stanley
lot of
and
companies
HSBC
that
banks.
came in
So,
Exactly,
exactly at
so
exactly.
like, don't like get just starstruck by these big rankings and etc. Right? Or if someone is doing very well, you go at your own pace, tackle the problem at your own pace, and try to understand it in your own manner. Right? How to proceed. Right? You just do an analysis of where you are right now and get a good and possible target for yourself. Right? Don't
Exactly.
get to comparing yourself with the rest of the entire people. Right? Because as I am telling you
Coming
again, that this year the internship season is going to be probably is going to be offline, and the dynamics of an offline internship seasons are going to be completely different from that of an online, right? So even in the trend of CP actually has risen manifold over the last 2 to 3 years, and that might not be the case next this semester also, the upcoming internship drive also, right? So keep your hopes up at least, right?
Yeah, and I
so
can
like
share some
coming to
experiences of
Sahil
my friends as
question.
well. Yeah, Sahil, you can go on. I'll share.
Uh, so you can convert to dual degree later as well, like after your intern.
Yeah. So what I was saying is that like some of the experiences of my friends is that like even in the like day 6 or day 7 companies, like they only ask like what is a cadence algorithm, like a very simple algorithm which is only based on the arrays. So like as the days go on, like the level of the questions like decrease a lot. So you don't need to think so much, like you need to prepare a lot as well, and like coming to the time frame. So
Yeah,
definitely
exactly.
any amount of preparation can lead you to somewhere, and definitely CDC is for you guys. Like everyone at the end of the day gets to somewhere. That's
So it's your batchmate, like you know तुम्हारे batchmates की क्या level है, right? Just leave about the top 20 to 30 people, then you know it's like more or less like the general flock, right? So then you just keep that in mind and don't get superly stressed out or anything like what is going to happen. Just take it at your own pace, right? That is what I wanted to just keep on stressing. Don't get superbly stressed out or anything regarding the CDC process, because even if you don't get an intern, which probably won't be the case since you are already being so diligent about 2 months before prior to the internship season drive, but you still actually can basically cover up, do a project from a professor for the summers, get a intern at a startup, which also is a equally good option, and then you keep preparing for your placement, right, over the entire 1 year. So no issue is going to happen if you don't get it right now, sorted, all of that sorted right now, right? Take your time. There won't be any issues.
Amazing. That was some good advice. So I think Nikhil Saraswat asks what time will the coding round start, and in general, there's questions about the timeline. So last time basically it started around 23rd of July. The online rounds of companies had started, and on 7th of August we had our day one. 8th of August was day two. Then 1 week after that was day three. Then 1 day after that was day four, and so on. So it's on weekends. Day one, day two, day three, day four are on weekends. So that's how it usually is. Yes. Sahil, could you reiterate like what the timeline could be if it is offline? How will the
Yeah.
yeah.
So last time in 2019, our academic year started in July mid, and the coding test started from July mid to August starting. There were coding rounds, and the first day one was in the first weekend of August. Apparently. These guys have, I think, first academic year starting from August then, right?
Yeah,
So
this time the academic year starts 14th of August. Mid August. Yes.
yeah, so it should start like most probably you will have test till August 25 or 20, and then you'll have your interviews. For tests, like they might even allow you to give from homes and right and
That
have
might be the
interviews
case,
on
that,
campus. We are not sure of that currently.
but there's no real notification that has come out about this. But if it does happen,
No,
like you said,
Aditya, I said that coding test would end by 20 to 25, I guess, and then not end like for day one, day two companies at least. They will be completed by then. If the tests are offline as well.
yeah. So what you need to note is these tests that happen before day one, day two are just for day one, day two, or maybe for a day three company. Following that, you keep having tests. In the following week, you will have tests for day three and day four companies. That's how it works. For day one, day two companies, you'll have
Also,
tests. Yeah, yeah, please go on.
also like I would say prepare for the worst, like prepare like you will have coding test from July middle.
Yeah, yeah. Because whatever dates we are speculating are all just speculations. You could be asked to give your
You
coding
want to
tests
get
from
to know in near future. So we got to know about the timelines 1 month prior to the coding tests. And
I think we
we
got
didn't
our
even
first.
get to know the dates that they will start at this time. It comes company wise, like on MFTP itself, there will be notification for each company in the sequence they are coming.
We were told about the opening of the CV portal last time, exactly 1 month before the first coding test happening. So about like 20th of June, we were told about the CV portal opening. The date for the submission of our CVs was approximately 15th of July, and the first coding round, which was that of Salesforce, if I'm not wrong, like among the software companies, was on 23rd of June. That's all. Right? And then
Yeah, I
there
think the
were
first one
tests.
was of basically TI, right?
Oh yeah,
And
sorry. Texas Instruments was the first one.
yeah, and then Salesforce, pretty close
Then
up.
Salesforce. Yes. And following that, there were tests each and every day. So you'll have 2 tests, 3 tests also every day up until day one. Day one was on 7th of August for us. So that's how it was for us last time. And I think for offline, like in the offline case also, that's the case. Where can I get CDC coding rounds exact questions? So the exact questions of older rounds, like you can ask your seniors or, oh yes, Code Club compiles CDC experiences of a lot of people, and we ask them to write blogs on Medium about these things. You can check out Code Club's Facebook page and also our Medium page to read these blogs about your seniors' experiences with the CDC internship. Right? Over there, you can find some of their questions that they got in the coding rounds or in the interviews as well. Or you can talk to them personally, just ping anyone up. Sahil has posted the link of the same. So whatever links have been shared over here in the meeting chat, don't worry, I'll put them all in one place in a Google Doc and it will be shared on Code Club's Facebook page. So do be on the lookout for that. Also, the meeting recording of this session will be shared in the same doc. And I would encourage all of you to take part in the code night that's coming up. It will happen on the 7th of May, which is next Saturday. So 7th of May, yeah, that's next Saturday. So do take part in that code night. It will happen on CodeChef, and it is just a 2-hour contest with approximately 5 questions. Will give you a good practice for your upcoming CDC rounds. So yes, do take part in that. And, okay, there are questions still. I believe this is the last question we'll be taking, and then we'll be closing this. It's just it's about how to remain motivated when you face a lot of wrong answers and many errors while doing practice for DSA. I think that's about everybody who starts off with DSA in the beginning. That was me as well. Initially, you are going to face tough days, of course. Stay motivated by you know having your goal in mind, because you are doing so much practice to achieve a good internship. And if you have a goal in mind, and if you stay like and have a good circle of friends around you who are aiming for the same thing and can like help you out with like whatever problems that you are facing or whatever doubts you're facing, have some seniors to like being or just take general advice from. And yeah, basically this will happen to anybody who practices DSA, because it's obviously not easy to crack every question. And uh, at the beginning, it is certainly very daunting to just do DSA practice. But yes, just stay motivated, because there is a certain thing that you want to achieve, and there is only one path to doing it, and that is just practice and practice. Which is like, yeah, exactly. Think of JEE. It's like Sahil said, essentially. So, I believe on that note, we will close this meeting. I thank all the panelists again for your time and your invaluable advice. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining. Bye bye.